Welcome everyone to the Friday edition of our Packers News live chat alongside Tom Silverstein. I'm Olivia Reiner. The Packers took the practice field for the final time today before their Sunday night game against the New Orleans Saints. We'll bring you the latest on some injury updates to both wide receiver Davante Adams and defensive lineman Kenny Clark in just a moment. However, as always, we want to hear from you. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, we know you have a lot of thoughts on your mind leading up to this highly anticipated Sunday night game. Whatever your question is, leave it down in the chat. Tom and I will get to some of those questions toward the end of our conversation today. Wide receiver Davante Adams is doubtful for Sunday's game against the New Orleans Saints with an undisclosed hamstring injury. Head coach Matt LaFleur said that the decisions regarding Davante Adams' status on Sunday is going to be game time. Tom, the Packers could be in some big trouble if they don't have Adams healthy and ready to go for Sunday night. He's their leader in both receptions and receiving yards. How are they going to replace Adams if he's unable to go?
Well, I'm as long as he's listed as doubtful, unless they upgrade him to questionable on Saturday, he's not playing, and I would assume he's not playing anyways. Really, there's no replacing Davante Adams. It's no different than the New Orleans Saints who've been going with their star wide receiver, Thomas. You've just got to spread the ball around and use what you got. I mean, I would say Aaron Jones is the focal point, sort of like he was last week. And, they were still successful when Davante Adams left the game. Now, they were ahead, and so they were kind of in a position of strength. And this time, they're going to be starting without Davante Adams. I just think they got to get their tight ends. They got to get Robert Tonyan. They got to get Sternberger involved. He's got to hang on to the ball and then figure out ways to get it to Aaron Jones.
Not only are the Packers going to be without their top wide receiver, most likely hasn't been made official just yet. The Saints are also going to be down their top wide receiver. Michael Thomas has been dealing with an undisclosed ankle injury. He has already been ruled out. While the Packers are likely not going to have Davante Adams, they will potentially be welcoming back defensive tackle Kenny Clark to the lineup. He's been dealing with an undisclosed groin injury that he sustained week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings, and it kept him sidelined against the Detroit Lions. Clark can really do it all, Tom. He's both stout in the run, and he's good at getting after the quarterback. How dependent are the Packers' defensive line on Clark if he's able to go?
Well, it would be a big boost if he could play, but I have my doubts about that. I sort of wonder whether they're just working him back in practice and maybe eyeing the following week. I'm sure they were taking a look and wanting to see how his injured groin would respond to practicing, but I'm not convinced he'll play. But let's say he does. They can probably get 25 snaps out of him. I don't think they're going to want to do much more than that. It'll make a difference. They need him. He's the anchor in the middle of that defense. And I really think that the Saints could wind up trying to the pass out and then run it against the defensive line. So, yeah, they need him back. They really need him back, but we'll see whether he's actually active.
Not only are the Packers dealing with injuries to wide receiver Davante Adams and defensive lineman Kenny Clark, they're also dealing with an injured tight end Josiah DeGuara. He has an undisclosed ankle injury that he's been dealing with for the past week. He sustained it against the Minnesota Vikings. He later aggravated that injury in practice last week, and it kept him out of the game against the Lions. This week, it's looking doubtful that he is going to play once again against the Saints. He hasn't practiced for most of the week. He practiced in a limited capacity back on Wednesday. However, both today, yesterday, he did not practice at all. He wasn't super involved in the Packers passing game as far as being a receiver for the Packers back in week 1 against the Vikings. He only had a reception for 12 yards. However, he has been used all over the formation as a blocker. Out of the backfield, sort of as a fullback. He's also been used as a tight end, as an H-back. being split out wide as a receiver. He can be lined up absolutely everywhere, it seems like. Tom, how sorely are the Packers going to miss DeGuara, even though he's a rookie that's only played one game?
Well, they ran the ball pretty well without him against. He adds a dimension of, he creates question marks for the defense. Is it going to be lined up as a wide receiver? Is it going to be a tight end? Is it going to be a fullback? He kind of causes the opposition to think about the personnel they're putting on the field. Plus, he's a good player, but they can function without him. John Lovett served as the fullback and also lined up outside a few times. Now, he's not going to be the same receiver that DeGuara is, but he gives them something as fullback. And Jay Sternberger has to come through for them. He's built to do the exact same things that DeGuara does. He just has to hang on to the ball because, when he doesn't, then you can't have him in the game.
We've listed off a number of not so great injury updates for the Packers. Why don't we end on something slightly more positive? Right tackle Billy Turner is off of the injury report for the first time heading into week 3 against the New Orleans Saints. Last week, he was active for the game against the Lions. However, he was just there in case of emergency purposes to be put in. Right tackle Rick Wagner, the backup, he started in Turner's place at right tackle. How likely is it that Turner is actually going to play in this week's game and start at right tackle?
Well, I think Turner will be back this week. I just have a feeling that they want to. He's had a good, almost 3 weeks to come back from that injury, and really almost 4. And so I think he's ready to play. The big question was going to be, do they put him back at guard and play Rick Wagner at right tackle? Or do they Lucas Patrick at guard and Turner at right tackle? My sense is they're going to play Turner at right tackle and keep Wagner as the backup. If it were me, play Wagner at right tackle, and I would move Turner into guard because right now that's their best 5, as Matt LaFleur likes to identify. I just think they're better off that way, but my gut tells me that they want Turner at right tackle, and that's the way they're going to go.
Head coach Matt LaFleur said that he's hopeful to see Turner active and turning it loose out there on the field on Sunday. We'll see exactly where he wants Turner to turn it loose when the game rolls around. All right, everybody, let's jump on over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube to check out some of your questions. Let's start with Brent. What's going on, Brent? Brent asks, when do you think the Packers will start using running back AJ Dillon more on offense? AJ Dillon got a number of quote-unquote garbage time snaps, some touches toward the end of the game against the Detroit Lions. Not a ton, perhaps around 5. However, a substantial number, enough to get some under his belt as he's getting acclimated here to the NFL. How do you anticipate the Packers using Dillon going forward as he gets a little bit more experience?
Well, right now, Jamal Williams making it so that Dillon can't get on the field. Jamal Williams is playing some really good football. He's running hard. He's averaging almost 6 yards per carry. He's a factor in the passing game, and he can block. I don't think you want to take him off the field all that much when you don't have Aaron Jones on the field. So AJ Dillon's going to have to be patient. There's a time when they need him. They don't have to rush that. I think stick with Jones and Williams, and I think that's what they'll do, and they'll try to sprinkle Dillon, especially, if they can get in the lead and they got to run their 4-minute offense. I could see them using him a little bit to get some first downs. So I just don't think there's any need to rush him into action. He's going to have plenty of time to get the ball later this year.
That's a tough room to get some snaps and touches in with both veteran running backs Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams ahead of Dillon. We'll see exactly how the Packers want to use him going forward. Thank you, Brent, for your question. Let's take a question now from Jordan. Jordan, who has been a consistent viewer over the last few days. Thanks for all of your great questions, Jordan. Let's see what you said. Do you think we will see more running back Aaron Jones split out wide since he's been successful as a receiver and more Jamal Williams in the backfield? What is the Packers' plan for the running backs, both out of the backfield, being split out wide as a receiver, however the Packers want to use them in their formation, going into this week's game on Sunday?
Well, that's a question, and I'm glad you asked it, because sort of what I'm writing about for Sunday is how they use Aaron Jones as a wide receiver, and whether, at what point are they getting the most out of him as a wide receiver. And I think it's a little dependent on what the opposition is doing. If they're trying to cover him with a cornerback or a safety or a linebacker, it's a way for Aaron Rodgers to kind of see how the defense is setting up against him. But he really looked for Aaron Jones last week and sort of treated him like he was a primary wide receiver. The only issue with that is that Jones isn't a good receiving running back, but he's not a wide receiver. And so he's not going to be able to run all the same routes that Davante Adams can run or Allen Lazard. He's not going to be as good as them. You saw early in that game, he ran a double move, and it just wasn't a great route, and Rodgers overthrew him. I think they will continue to get him the ball that way. I don't know if they'll do it with Jamal Williams in the backfield. I think see more of Tyler Ervin, especially in this game on turf. I have a feeling that he's going to be a bigger part of the game plan.
You heard it from Tom, everyone. Take Tyler Ervin off of your benches if you're in fantasy. Potentially a little bit more Tyler Ervin this weekend against the Saints. Let's go to Samuel over on YouTube. Samuel says the Packers went 4-0 without Davante Adams in the first year of head coach Matt LaFleur's offense last year, when he sustained a turf toe injury in about middle of the season there. And he points out that the Saints will be without wide receiver Michael Thomas, who has also been dealing with an undisclosed ankle injury. Tom, how does the potential loss, I should say, since Davante Adams hasn't officially been ruled out of this Sunday's game, who's going to suffer the brunt of the loss more, the Saints or the Packers, of their star wide receivers?
It's a horse apiece, I think. I don't think one team loses more than the other. The Saints rely a little bit more on Michael Thomas than the Packers do on Davante Adams, but not that much more. And both teams have explosive back at the passing game. Both teams have tight ends that can get down the field a little bit. And both teams have pretty good offensive lines. I really think the difference comes to Aaron Rodgers versus Drew Brees. And I'll make the point that you mentioned that they were 4-0 when Davante Adams was hurt. And during those 4 games, Aaron Rodgers really did a good job of spreading the ball around. He wasn't focused so much on Davante Adams or Jimmy Graham. He was just trying to get completion. But that hasn't been a problem this year. Even when he completed 14 balls to Davante Adams, he was still throwing it to everybody else. He's playing really well right now. Need him to continue to do that and just go ahead and spread it around and look for the open guy. He won't have to worry about where Davante Adams is. He's just got to figure out where the open receiver is going to be.
Our friend over on Facebook, Antrell, says that the offense is not going to be the issue in this game. It's going to come down to the defense. The defense needs to come out hot to start this game. They've had a little bit of an issue in both of the first 2 games of the season. And by they, I mean the Packers defense. They allowed scores on both of their opening drives. How does this defense need to show up on Sunday in order to shut out the Saints?
Yeah, I don't know that they can shut him out, but they've got to have an answer for Alvin Kamara. They have to figure out a way to bottle him up. And then, I don't know if they need to take some chances with some man coverage underneath and try to force Drew Brees to throw into coverage or force him to throw it deep, because sort of the impression most people is that his deep ball isn't as good as it used to be. And he's throwing, he throws timing routes. And so you sort of think that if they can play those receivers tight, they might be able to get them to hold on to the ball a tick longer, and that'll get the pass rushers there. But he's gonna make his completions. The thing you got to do is just not let Kamara go crazy. He can't have the kind of game Aaron Jones had last week for the Packers, because that was a difference in the game. And if they let Kamara do that, then they're going to walk out of there with a loss.
Thank you, Antrell, for your astute point, I would say. Let's take one question here from Carolyn. Carolyn asks if there are any lingering concerns about tight end Jay Sternberger and his 2 drops last week. The tight end group seems pretty deep, Carolyn points out. Jay Sternberger on paper only had 1 drop. However, he had another drop that ended up getting waved off anyway because the offense had committed a penalty on that play. How concerned are the Packers about those drops and Sternberger's somewhat slow start to the season?
I'm very concerned, I think. And it shows in the number of snaps. Robert Tonyan has moved well ahead of Sternberger. Sternberger was supposed to be the downfield threat and the guy who was really coming on after last year. But he's just hit a little bit of a sophomore slump. And I don't know if it was the result of having COVID early in camp or if it's just, he's just still needs to refine some things. Maybe he's trying to make too many big plays, but he has some talent, and they have to get him down or focus back, because he's a guy they need, and they're going to need him in this game. He's going to have to play that DeGuara role, or they're going to want him to play that role. I think they'll come back to him. I think Rodgers will try to come back to him in this game at some point, maybe early on, try to build his confidence, kind of like he did with MVS. So I think he'll be a factor in this game. But if he keeps dropping balls, then he's not going to play.
Carolyn wants to flip it over to the defense, too. Carolyn asks, what should Packers fans expect from the Saints defense? Are they going to focus on the run and stack the box? With wide receiver Davante Adams likely to be out, Aaron Jones is the Packers' greatest weapon on offense right now. How likely is it that they try to stop him on the ground and force Rodgers to throw to some of the other weapons, some of the other receivers on offense?
Yeah, this would be a good game to have a game plan similar to the Vikings game plan, because New Orleans gets after it. I mean, their front four is hard charging. Their linebackers are really aggressive. They're gonna try to blow up everything at the line of scrimmage, and they're good at it. They really are. Cam Jordan is just a really good defensive end, and will give whoever's playing at right tackle and Bakhtiari all they can handle. And then they've got Trey Hendrickson, who's a good pass rusher, and then they're up in that Marcus Davenport plays, and he's a 2018 first-round pick they picked as a pass rusher. So I think they got to do some things to slow that down. And, some of that jet sweep and play action and all that stuff really affected the Vikings. And I think they're going to have to do some of that to the Saints.
Before we wrap things up here, our friend over on Periscope, Smumster, asks a question that is related to just sort of the transactional nature of the game and game day, and also the fact that the Packers have two open roster spots right now, with wide receiver Equinemius St. Brown and guard Lane Taylor both going on IR. They ask, why do they refuse to add 2 people onto the 53-man roster and 2 from the practice squad to make it 55? So, Tom, we'll start with the first question. When should Packers fans expect to see those 2 spots on the 53-man roster filled? And then our second question would be, Which two players, if any, will the Packers decide to elevate from the practice squad to the active roster, as they're allowed to do so, not a requirement, for game day?
Yeah, I would think that they'll bring up Lovett to the 53. That's sort of my guess. I believe he's been brought up twice to the practice from the practice squad. You can only do. I might be wrong about that. I think he was in the first game and the second game. Hurry to fill the three-man roster. If you're not using that 53rd spot or the 52nd spot, who cares? I really think that they're looking at it as they need every dollar of cap room they're going to get to sign David Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones. And so why not? If that guy wasn't going to play, and you've got all these practice squad guys who are essentially your 52nd and 53rd guy anyways, I don't blame them. I don't think that's a bad move. If there were two guys you specifically wanted to bring in off the street and put on the practice squad and then bump two other guys up, that would be okay. But I don't have a problem with that. And I think they'll probably bring someone up Saturday, but I don't think they're in a rush to fill those spots.
You're correct, Tom. John Lovett has already been elevated to the 55 twice from the practice squad. If the Packers want to bring him up, they're going to have to sign him to the 53-man roster. He cannot be elevated as sort of that taxi squad, practice squad type of player. His time has expired. It's time to sign him or not. So that is what to expect heading into Sunday's game against the Saints. Thanks everyone for joining us yet again for yet another lovely live stream. We enjoy chatting with you guys very much. If you have not already, make sure you're subscribed and checking out PackersNews.com for all of your Packers coverage. Also, make sure you come back here before the game. I will be live first with Pete Doherty 90 minutes before the game, and then shortly after, Tom Silverstein and Leroy Butler will also be live for our subscribers over on PackersNews.com. 2 pregame shows, double the fun before the game on Sunday. Make sure you check it out. Also, after the game, I will be live with Ryan Wood, so you can come wrap it up with us if you're still awake late at night after the game. Well, it should be a lot of fun. For Tom, who has apparently disappeared, I'm Olivia. We'll see you next time.